Welcome back. A week from tomorrow, the House is holding its first public hearing into Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 election. There has been no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Moscow, but that has not stopped the left from going on the attack on this narrative. I want to bring in Republican Senator Roy Blunt, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And Senator, it's good to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, Maria. It's nice to be with you.
What do we know at this point? It feels like when I watch the mainstream media, it's all about, well, we haven't found the collusion evidence yet, but we're still watching.
Well, exactly. I was out at the CIA headquarters on Friday. I was there a week ago, I think I was the first member to get a chance last week to go through the documents that the Obama administration had. And, you know, when General Clapper, the former head of the Defense, the National Intelligence Agency, last week was asked about that. He said, we have seen no evidence of collusion, but we ought to be sure that that's the case. This has become a big enough issue that at the end of what the House does, at the end of what the Senate does, I think it's very important that everybody can walk away thinking that everybody that should have been talked to was talked to, that everything that should have been looked at was looked at. That's the best thing for the president. It's the best thing for the country. And so we need to be pretty relentless in looking at anything that's there. But, you know, General Clapper's made the most definitive public statement on that so far, and that was no evidence of any collusion between the campaign and the Russians. That doesn't mean the Russians weren't involved in our elections, because we know that they were.
As part of this investigation, are you also investigating these claims of wiretapping of Trump Tower during the election?
Well, the president's asked the Congress to look at that, which is, I think, interesting, since the president actually could himself ask that question. But we should look at how people were listened to. The Flynn case, I think we all believe now that that's because the FBI was listening to the Russian ambassador and caught that conversation with General Flynn. But that's not an unfair question to ask, and we should know. And of course, that would indicate what the FBI and the CIA were looking at and when they were looking at it. And important to get an answer to that question as well.
In fact, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, in an interview just last week, said that he would be open to a special prosecutor to investigate the Obama administration scandals, including things like the IRS targeting scandal. What do you make of that?
Well, I think there's a reason that the special prosecutor law was repealed. The Congress would have to reinstate the ability to have an actual special prosecutor. It doesn't say that that doesn't say that the Attorney General can't assign a particular individual to pursue a particular case. But really, you only want to look at a special prosecutor, in my view, if nobody's looking at this. A few years ago, we had a case where nobody in the Obama administration was looking at a situation, and I and others said, well, this is a last resort, but nobody's looking. Here you've got both a bipartisan House committee, a bipartisan Senate committee looking into this, and I think we ought to be sure we let that process work before we decide if anything else needs to be done or not. And if we do our job right, the decision should be by Democrats and Republicans both that everything that's been looked at has been looked at, and we can move on.
Well, I mean, it's no secret, certainly to the American people, that many of these agencies have become so politicized, whether it be the Department of Justice, the IRS, and people want to know if, in fact, all of the above has been looked at. I mean, where does that stand? You've got the IRS scandal, you've got Fast and Furious, you've got Secretary Clinton's server, the Department of Justice having come under some great criticism over the last year.
Well, I think it's important that we get to the bottom of things that we're looking at. I think it's also important we not spend an inordinate amount of time looking at the last administration. Other countries spend a lot of time trying to find out what the last administration did wrong. Right. We need to be getting to where we're focused on this administration getting things right. And this is not some small republic where you spend your time trying to figure out how to put the previous people that had these jobs in jail.
Sure.
But we need to get this particular issue of Russians in our elections right. I think there's a general view, Maria, that Russians right now, perhaps in the Netherlands, certainly in Germany and France, are involving themselves in those elections as they have over and over again in Eastern European elections. And one of the things we can do here is help other countries get prepared for this in a better way by doing this job right. That's why it matters.
I think you make a great point, particularly now, given the fact that you guys are working on an enormous agenda. You want to get Obamacare repealed and replaced, then you want to do tax reform and a whole host of other things on the president's agenda. Has this taken your attention away from the issues at hand?
Well, I think that it has taken away from what we need to be doing, just like the slow walking of allowing the president to get his team in place at these departments has taken away from that agenda. Everybody knows the importance of the first 200 days, the time between the inauguration and, say, Labor Day, and every one of those days you lose is a precious day in terms of what we can do to really get families to have the health coverage they need and people back to work, to the kind of jobs that can make stronger individuals and stronger families.
Yeah, and we've all watched the delays in the confirmation hearings.
Right.
Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.